What's up, world? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to the conversation, the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be with you here today. I have a very special cast that has created a very, very special project that is about forgiveness. I've seen this film twice. It's called Exhibiting Forgiveness, and it's a film made by the incredible Titus Kaphar, who will definitely add his statement that it was a collective effort and it was community that made this film. As you guys all know, I love to pull back social constructs, and I like to dig into religion, and I had no idea that this film would have so much religious undertones. And I love anything that examines multiple things at the same time, which is identity, which is vulnerability, which is emotional intelligence, and which is religion. And as a famous poet often says in one of his songs, question religion, question everything. And I think when you question religion, it makes you feel that much more alive. And that's exactly, for me, I don't know if this is what the cast intended to do, but this was something that I had been thinking about as I was watching this. So enough of me and so much more of them. At this time, I want to turn to this incredible dynamic cast that we have here for the Mike Muse Show Town Hall. I am so geeked right now because I've been watching this incredible artist, a Renaissance man, for so long. All of my art friends are going crazy over him, and they are shooketh that he is on my screen. Like, how did you get? I was like, I know. And then they were like, Mike, tell him we want a piece of his work. I was like, well, I don't know if you have the money for that, but I will definitely. Literally, my friend Dewana was like, Mike, tell Titus I want a piece of his work. I'm like, Dewana, I really can't help you. Just put the black Amex down. You know what I mean? And that may not be enough. Ladies and gentlemen, incredible artist Titus Kaphar. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How you doing? Thank
Good.
you so much for having us.
No, thank you for your gift, man. Your artistry is amazing. I've been watching your works and your paintings. It's very moving when you look at your work, and it really emotes. And there's a lot of intellectual stimulation when you're watching your pieces.
I mean, this, first of all, you're right. I'm going to say what you said. This is not my piece. This is our piece. We work together to do it. Film is a community sport. It's not something that you could do by yourself, and it wouldn't be what it was without this team right here. So, I'm always gonna say that first.
And you know me, I'm always gonna go ladies first. And so right behind you is someone who I've loved and admired for so long. Her spirit is amazing, and it's beautiful. And your spirit goes before you enter a room. And your gift of the vocals is absolutely incredible. Some people are just gifted, and you're one of those who are gifted.
Thank you.
And it has been a joy watching your acting excel over these last couple of projects. And it's really hard when you know someone for something first, and then they do something second.
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard to have that first disappear, but your singing actually disappears, and we don't see Andra Day, but we see the character singing, but I don't see Andra Day singing.
I love that. That's great. That was the goal. At the end of the day, I mean, coming into this, I know Titus was very specific about wanting her to be a musician, to be a singer. I think he was clear about who he wanted to cast also in this movie, as he explained it to me. But that is the goal, because even though I'm a singer and there are similarities, obviously, between her and I, she's a different singer with a different set of experiences and a different upbringing and a different set of influences. And so we wanted to make sure that was I have to bring as much of me as possible to the character, but there should also be her presence and her tastes, on her music. So thank you, I appreciate that.
I love when actors call out their character, and her in this film is named Aisha.
Yes.
It looks like you want to take care of Aisha.
I love Aisha.
Sure Aisha is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did love Aisha. Yeah. Also, Aisha is another black woman. You know what I mean? And so I think it mattered to me to I guess listen to the character in a sense. We talked deeply about it, Titus and I, for a long time. He was very clear about how he wanted her to be, but how much of myself he wanted me to bring to the character. And so we just wanted to make sure she was represented, not represented well, which does not mean perfectly, but just represented fully, as a black woman. And I think that, he was able to accomplish that. So
don't let perfection get in the way of progress.
Absolutely.
And the growth in the story arc of Aisha. And I thought that was really interesting how you did that dynamic. There was this beautiful exchange between your father-in-law sitting to your right in Lerone. John Earl Jokes, how are you, sir?
I am fine, man. I'm better now. I'm sitting here.
We are all made better because you're sitting here. The gift of artistry that you brought to the screen was absolutely amazing. And the way you took the audience on a ride for almost 2 hours and held that space for so long was absolutely incredible. So I just salute to you and to your artistry.
Oh, Oh man, thank you so much. But it's due to this guy, man. He put it on the page, man. I mean, it was all there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I stayed inside of the truth of it.
Yeah.
And as long as I could do that, and with these other amazing artists with me, these actors, it became not work. It became a gift.
What was the truth of that in your character, LaRoe?
The truth is that I wanted to make sure that, first of all, it served as a story, of what Titus wrote. But then at the same time, it's people that I knew. I knew that was my grandfather, that was my father. And part of it was me, too, as well, because of what was passed down. It was passed through my grandfather, through my father, to me. And if I can just stand in that truth, maybe someone would see themselves and say, oh, wow, I need to either rectify that or question why I'm like this.
Andra, how did you... There was a scene, audience, and you'll see once you watch what I'm talking about. It was, I believe it was in the hospital when you looked at him and you said, give us time, give us space. Right. But it was a way that you did it that was so perfect for like a daughter-in-law that was both with reverence and scolding at the same time. That was a good balance. How did you approach that scene right there?
Well, thank you, first of all. I think, again, it's like you said, we all talked to Titus about what it is he wanted. Because, there's something about portraying someone's actual life, on screen. And then there's a different level to it or another layer to it when the person is on set with you and actually directing you. So, but I think it's also because, I think Aisha loves her husband, and I think because she loves her husband, she loves his family, but she can also, because she cares about him, she can be very protective as well. And so, but I think there's also an understanding that protection doesn't mean, allowing this sort of estrangement to persist. You know what I mean? I think she's aware that there probably needs to be reconciliation. I think can probably perceive that, like, yeah, it looks like he's genuinely trying, but maybe he's not aware that it's going to take time. Forgiveness takes time. You know what I mean? That trust takes time. Vulnerability takes time. So I think there is a reverence, there is a love. I think there's a desire for reconciliation, but I think there's also a desire for Laurent to understand that there's a lot of damage done. Like, you know what I mean? And you don't get to just be the hero and be the super father overnight. You're going to have to be here and be diligent and put in the work and put in the time. But right now, give him his space. You know what I mean? So.
And that's exactly what your husband in front of you, Andre Holland, actually questioned that in that moment. Welcome, Andre Holland. How are you?
Hey, man, if I had your hand, I'd throw mine in.
Ooh, that's a good Southern black saying, isn't it? That's so a good.
Southern.
You channeling daddy
Southern.
right now.
I'm like,
you channeling daddy right now.
Alabama? Like, what is, talk to me. Are you from the South?
I'm from Alabama.
Oh my God, I called that out.
Yes.
I really did not know that.
Oh, wow. Well, I thought you knew. Wow, that's
No, I
crazy.
really did not know that.
Yeah.
Alabama jumped heavy out the pages now with that one.
Early morning, man. I'm just waking up.
But bless your
I
heart.
ain't got my filter on.
Right.
He's actually full of Southern sayings, by the way. I think that's my favorite part about you.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Well, I'm gonna break character a little bit. It just gives me joy to say that I went to University of Michigan. We beat University of Alabama.
Oh,
so
here we go.
in the Rose Bowl. Yeah.
You know what they
thank
say, man. A blind hog will find an acorn every night.
Andre, how's Vanderbilt doing right now?
He being messy.
Oh,
He being
man.
messy. We'll see you then. Talk to me in January.
I just hope you forgive me at the end of this, my brother. At the end of this.
I think we'll end this interview early.
Everybody gets this work. Everybody gets
Come before. I can't say nothing.
yeah, I'm all about equity.
Right.
Yeah,
I like
equity,
that. I like that.
inclusion.
I actually like that.
Inclusion. Andre Holland, one, thank you for letting me roast you for a little bit. Because, I mean, I've had the ability to interview you a couple of times, and I've had to be able to see your work, and you never disappoint me. You're one of those individuals that every time your name is attached to a project or every time you see you on a scene, you just know you're going to deliver.
Yep.
And so thank you for always stepping up to home plate and hitting a grand slam, and that is not easy to do, and to be that consistent of an actor, so I salute to you on that one.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. Well, I feel like I owe it to the people on whose shoulders I stand.
Yeah.
And one of them is sitting right behind me right now. I mean, I grew up watching cats like this.
Yeah.
Who put out so many wonderful performances over the years. So
Yeah.
I just want to add something to the story, man.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
Of course. I'm just curious from a personal level. So I've heard you guys as a collective, talk about bringing yourselves to the character and into the work. I always have had an issue, and I'm not, embarrassed to admit it, with forgiveness. I had to get healed from holding grudges. So I'm kind of been loosened of holding of grudges, but forgiveness isn't as easy for me. And that's something I'm working on. I'm just curious with you because, your story arc is the center of the film. Personally, as Andre Holland, have you had trouble with forgiveness and reconciliation?
Mike, I think that, I'm from the South, as we've established, and from the Black church, and I was taught, like many of us are, that, forgive at all costs, turn the other cheek, right? And what I was not always taught is that, it's possible to forgive and also be boundaried and to protect oneself. So my journey is one towards learning how to do that, right? And at the same time, I'm also learning how to give people space, people from whom I want forgiveness. Right, there have been times when I've reached out to people who I've harmed, who haven't been ready to talk about it. And I'm like, well, why not? Why can't we talk about it now? So I'm learning how to pump the brakes on that, man, and give people the space that they need. So I've learned a lot from this experience, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Talking.
So I want to put Titus now in conversation with that, because I think what you're saying, Andre, personally, you are more quickened to forgive and to reconcile, but your character was not willing to reconcile as quickly. In Titus, I feel like that was a question, really the thesis of this film. And I loved, and I'll let you expand on that, but I love when the actor, give her props, she's not here, Anjanu Ellis, who was phenomenal in his role. In exchanging with Andre Holland's character, she called out Matthew 6:15. And that stood out to me, so I just wrote it down just to be more clear with it. And it said, but if you do not, quote, but if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father would not forgive your sins. And I feel like that has been such a stronghold on religion, right? In particular within the Black church, about forgiveness and not God won't forgive you. And so I think sometimes that can do a lot more trauma. So I'm just curious, was that the thesis of this film and specifically that verse?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that I watch my family, so many of my, my mother, my auntie, my grandmother go through situations with folks who harmed them, frankly. And because of their faith, they feel obliged to forgive. And sometimes in this forgiveness, they're bringing themselves back into harmful situations. I don't believe in that. I just don't believe in that. I can't, as a son, watch my mother make a decision and put herself back in harm. As a son, I can't do that. As a friend, I don't want to watch people do that. But what happens with that interpretation of that particular scripture, like you said, people think that means forgive at all costs. But we can forgive and create boundaries at the same time, right? I can say, Christian A. Smith says this. He says, forgiving means a reassessment of our boundaries. That's not how we treat it. That's not what we do. I can say I forgive you and at the same time acknowledge we're toxic for one another. We shouldn't be in the same room together. I can forgive you and unfriend you. I can forgive you and not come to your wedding. Like, we don't have to be in the same place. We can create boundaries for safety, for me or you or whoever, but that's not the kind of forgiveness that I was taught.
I needed a little bit of a moment there, because that's not exactly in the same way. I was always taught just forgive immediately. The Bible says. Like, I grew up in a space where the Bible always says. And for me, I always felt like that doesn't allow you to properly heal. Like, I feel like you have to sit with your emotions and sit with your feelings and to do that.
In many cases, it asks you to pretend like what you're feeling you didn't actually feel, right? That harm that was done to you, forgive and forget. What if that harm is actually unforgettable? What do you do? What do you do then? Well, what we often tell people is we say, just forget anyway, right? Just pretend like it never happened. God will heal you of that later. I don't think that that's what God wants us to be doing. I don't think God wants us to walk through the world pretending like some stuff that's not real. We want to call that faith. That's not faith. I don't think that's faith.
So, John, I want to go to you on that one, because there is a scene where you're talking about your upbringing. And when you're talking with your son and Andre Holland's character about the way you were reared, right, and the way that you were raised, right, and the things that you watched your father do to your mother, right, and the interactions, in particular, this discussing the gun, the moment of the gun. And it was almost laissez-faire for you. It was almost just a matter of fact, right? As if you were void of emotion. And I'm wondering, do you think, because you mentioned truth early in the conversation, do you think that was your character's truth to dive into the religion aspect of it and just forgive immediately and not deal with witnessing such trauma as a young child?
I think that was inside of that character. It was his truth, because sometimes we teach what we know. So he was taught that from his father, and I'm sure he got it from his father. And so what happens then is that you pass down everything with that, or you get to the point like my dad used to say to me when I used to go to him for some questions and I needed answers to. He would say, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." And then I'm more confused now because I really thought you did know what to tell me, because didn't you go through this? When you 20 at one point? When you 30 at one point? When you 16 at one point?
Yeah.
And now you don't know what to tell me? Tell me something, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I found out a lot of times they just don't, because what has been passed down to them, they pass it on.
Yeah.
And that's what they really mean by it. I don't know what to tell you, because I'm going to give you what I've been taught.
And it's interesting, that ignorance of I don't know actually hurts even more.
It does.
Right? Because
It
you
does.
actually want an answer.
Yes.
Right? Like, I want you to tell me why you're this way, or I want you to, there has to be a reason.
Yes.
And then you're not telling me the reason actually does more harm to me.
Yeah.
And
when I became a father, I decided I'm never going to say that to my kids. I decided, they asked me, I'm going to make up something if I don't know, but I don't.
Yeah.
I try not to, but
His
it's
kids
like,
are out there right now.
yeah, but at the same time, I wasn't
She's
going to never
shaking
say
her
to them,
head.
I don't
She's
know
like,
what
"What,
to tell you.
Daddy?"
Yeah.
We're going to figure it out.
That
You
is.
know what I mean? To the point they probably know more than I know, but I'm not going to say I don't know what to tell you.
I love that. I'm kind of tripping out right now watching you, John, because you were just so phenomenal in that role. And so I keep looking at you. You were so good, I actually can't see you as John Earl Jones.
Oh, no, man. Come
I keep
on.
seeing you as Lerone, right? And
Right.
you were
man.
just that good, right?
Wow.
I'm like, is this Lerone or is this John talking?
It was the makeup, man. It was the hair.
No, not physically, but you just left such an impression on me with the role. And Titus, I think that was part of your writing. But Andra, I want to get to that point where John is talking about just tell me something. The song you wrote was absolutely beautiful, called Brick in it. We're going to unpack that just a little bit, but there's a line in there that you wrote where you says, excuse me, get into the microphone, where you say, forgiving when we've never known forgiveness. Is that kind of what this conversation is about?
Yeah, I think it's an aspect of the conversation for sure. You know, I think really the crux of the song is this idea that, I mean, simply put, it's that your past and your past traumas do not have to be your present traumas or your future traumas. That your past does not have to define you. It doesn't, you know, if you came from an abusive home, you don't have to create an abusive home for you and your family. And I think that's one of the greatest miracles in life. I always tell people, we're always looking for people to turn water to wine, but one of the greatest miracles is our ability as people to create a present and a future and a life that we've never actually seen or experienced. You know, how do you create peace, and how do you create a loving, peaceful, nurturing environment when all you've ever known is abuse and chaos? And so, you know, that's kind of, it's the idea of literally building with bricks that you don't have. How did you build a home when you don't even have bricks? So I think that's what we're kind of examining here, you know.
I want to give more context to the song because it's, the audience, the name of the song is Bricks, and it's so beautiful and very poignant.
Thank you.
It goes, filling the places that were never filled in, hanging a picture we never envisioned, forgiving when we never known forgiveness, learning to hear when no one ever listened, earning to heal when no one ever healed. I think I messed up a few words, but
You
that
got it.
is
You're good.
the gist of it. And I
Maybe
just
I
thought,
should have been less wordy. No, I'm just
no.
kidding.
I was trying to
No,
type
I'm
endless
kidding.
at the same time. I was like, this is beautiful.
Right, yeah, it was good. I saw the look.
I was like crying. Like, oh my God, and I want to not healed. And I don't have a picture of a
I
vision.
can't. I need a vision.
Of a future.
I got to envision it and manifest,
I
right?
have no bricks.
All
I
the
have no
words.
bricks. Titus, I want to go to a decision point because what I found interesting was that we saw Andra's character writing that throughout.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what was that decision of having it part of the story arc? Because the song isn't complete until the end.
The song's not completed to the end. It's a piece of art where you watch art be created. So in the film, both of our characters here are artists. And so you watch Andra create this song. You go through the film and see her do this, and what is her process, and her stealing away moments over here to write, her sitting on top of the washing machine while the baby is asleep to get her thing done. That's the creative process. And she's taking all of the content from her experience, what she is living out with her partner. And Andre, at the same time, Terrell is doing the same thing. He is taking his experience and putting it on the canvas. So it was an opportunity to show both of these kinds of different modes of art working be shown on the screen at the exact same time.
That's wild. I didn't even pick that up. They were working parallel.
That's for free. You can keep that one.
Oh my God, that's good. Audience, the way that he leaves Easter eggs in this film is just unreal. So basically, you put two artists in conversation with each other who are exploring trauma through different mediums.
Exactly.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say one more thing, just if I can quickly,
Please,
about the point that you brought up with John. As LaRon and Terrell are sitting in the basement, and LaRon is telling him the story of his father, what LaRon is actually saying inside of himself is, if I can forgive my father, can't you forgive me too? Right? So he has to diminish the impact of what his father did to him, what Terrell's grandfather did to his father, in order so that he can justify his son forgiving him.
It's almost like a force. Force forgiving.
Yes.
Like force forgiving without actually dealing with the trauma of it all.
Yeah.
So I want to go, that leads me right to Andre now, because I think there was such a very tender moment between you and your son in the movie. And I found it interesting that we saw some of the panic attacks you were having in your dreams and the challenges you're having with it. But then we saw this moment when you were helping your son breathe. And I thought that was just such a powerful moment of vulnerability between a black father and a black son. So if you can just talk to us a little bit about what that scene entailed for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an example of, a father trying to do it differently with his son, trying to equip his son to, help him to be more resourced. He could see in his son that he was already having some of the same difficulties, right? And he took the time to offer him some sort of tool to help him navigate. And I think it's really beautiful and remarkable at the very end. It's one of the scenes I love the most. After Terrell's come back from the gallery and he falls asleep in the chair and he wakes up and we see him for the first time, waking up with a sense of ease and peace about him and not panicking, which allows him then to address his work in a different way. And then his son comes in and then he's able to pick up his son and give him a big hug. And you get the sense that, while everything's not wrapped up in a bow, you get the sense that there are more choices available to Terrell now, which I think is a really, really beautiful way to end the story.
You use the word ease. I'm just wondering, is that the reconciliation between the person, Andre Holland, and the character Terrell? Because I've always heard that, forgiveness isn't for the other person, but forgiveness is for you.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And that's something that I, personally am also continuing to learn, is that it is for the person, for the forgiver. And it's by doing that creates the space wherein you can forgive another person and perhaps, reconcile or build a relationship. I think what Titus does beautifully is that we don't see a reconciliation, right? We don't see the sort of end of the story. But some people watching it say, well, he didn't forgive him at all. Other people say, well, he did. And some people say, well, tomorrow, maybe they'll, get together. And I think all of those things are possible, but only because they were able to forgive themselves, I think, and to accept that, what they feel is what they feel.
Titus, you talked about a few moments ago about the boundaries and the forgiveness. You can forgive, but that you can still create and re-examine the boundaries that you have. There's a moment when the father and son had this reconciliation moment, if you will, and there's an exchange. I don't want to give anything away, but there's an exchange of an object. Why was that so significant in this piece, that exchange?
I would make a distinction between forgiveness and reconciliation.
Oh, let's go there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think those two things are synonymous.
Okay.
I think that I can forgive you, but that doesn't reconciliation implies this idea that we have come back together in a particular way. And sometimes that's possible and sometimes that's not. If your father has passed, for example, and you can, give forgiveness when that person is gone, right? That's the way in which it is for us. So reconciliation and forgiveness are in my mind, they're very different things, and we can talk about that later. But in the film, there's this moment of Abraham and Isaac. And if you've grown up in the church, you know the story of Abraham and Isaac, right? What happens? Abraham takes his son, his only son, up to the altar and is about to put a knife to his neck to sacrifice him to prove that he is faithful to God. Now, this is a sermon that I've heard from the pulpit again and again and again and again. And it was fine. I just listened to it. It's about, somebody being faithful, so on and so forth. But then my son was born. And then the nurse put my son in my hands. And then I went to church a couple Sundays later and they said that sermon. And I said, no. I said, no, that doesn't make any sense. Not my boy. No. So those are the kinds of things that I experienced that made me go, God is real and I know that, but I can't follow that. Whatever that is, that doesn't make any sense to me. The thing that would allow me to put a knife to my son's throat and then we justify it, can't do that. So what happens at the moment that you're talking about in the film is a reversal of that story. So in that story, in the biblical story, what happens, the son becomes the sacrifice. The son is the offering, right? Terrell takes this object that we won't say what it is, but we know that that is symbolic of his father. And he offers his father to his father, back to his father. So that, like you said, there's a bunch of hidden Easter eggs in the film. If you watch it 2 and 3 times, you're gonna be like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't know that's what that was about, but that's what that's about.
Is it about offering his father to his father to remind his father of something? Is it to...
Not to remind him of something. Not to remind him of something. It is an honest gesture.
Okay.
It is definitely an honest gesture. It's the thing that it is a symbol of his father, but at the same time, it is made from his hands.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. A piece of him.
Yes. Yes.
Which is actually what the point of an offering is, right? It's
That's
to
right.
offer up something of you.
That's right.
And something that is vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? That represents you in that moment, in that space. John, I want to go to you because I'm curious your relationship, personal walk with religion, if you're comfortable in sharing. Because in your character, Lerone, I often see this with many people who are religious, no matter what religion sect that they represent. There's always a forward leaning of their religion, right? And what I'm most comfortable with is Christians, right? And so sometimes a Christian will let you know they're Christian, and they kind of beat the Bible over you with scripture in verse.
Right.
And I felt your character did that often in times of chaos, right? Like the defensive mechanism was verse, biblical. Talk to us about your own constitution when it comes to religion and how you saw your character Lerone's use.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I grew up in church, right? But I questioned a lot of the things that, like Titus, from the Bible, because it was mainly a lot of women ministers in my family. My aunt is a minister, 2 of them, and then I had an uncle that was a minister. But sometimes they didn't practice what they preach. But they can quote almost everything out of the Bible. So I remember when I got baptized, they said, you need to be baptized so you can be saved. Okay, so I'm going to be saved from what? That's what I was thinking, what I'm being saved from. And then I really realized that you are being saved from something, right? You're being saved from yourself if you decided if you're going to do something that's against your own nature of what you do. So I decided, okay, I'm going to be a Christian, but I don't have to be a Bible-toting, thumping Christian. Because I remember when you met me, you thought I was a heathen.
No,
Are we
I
coming?
didn't.
Oh my God!
No,
Go off,
not
John.
true. Not true.
I'm kidding.
Remember, it was Titus.
Everybody
It was
knows.
Titus. It was Titus. I'm gonna tell the truth. I'm gonna tell the truth.
Everybody get
No.
this work, don't they?
Nah, it
Everybody
was
get this work.
everybody could get this work. Since y'all want to come for me, it was Titus who was like, "Hey, go over there and to pray with him." So I went to pray. I remember I got there. I was like, he seemed like a believer to me. I thought he was a believer, so I sat down and prayed with him. He was like, "I believe in God." I was like, "I thought so," but guess you read like a heathen to somebody.
I decided to take on the fact that I said I'm a recovering heathen.
I don't know, play me like that.
man. Say it.
Bring it to the altar.
Look, can I say one thing?
Sure. What you got? What you got?
Okay, all
You in
right.
trouble,
So
bro.
first of all,
Everybody can get
I
it.
want to make something crystal clear because I know my mother is listening. I know my aunties are listening. So let me make something crystal clear right now. I am who I am because of believers. Believers are the people who love me most in the world. I would not have survived. I definitely believe in God, but my walk is different from the way that my grandmother walked. My walk is different from the way that my mother walked. I just want to make that really clear. Mom, you ain't got to call me. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah. But I think sometimes, look, I think there's a theory out there. It might be just my own theory. That when you question religion, it actually leans into your faith more, right? It makes you believe stronger with that. I can only speak for myself. That's been my experience.
Absolutely.
And so as I question religion more, I've gotten away from the dogma
Yes.
and into more of the spiritual dynamic.
Yes.
And I don't mind I'm asking you guys some vulnerable questions. I don't mind turning the table. You never insert yourself in these conversations, but as a host. But I grew up so religious that I thought that when someone got sick, I had to call the pastor to pray, right?
Yeah.
When you got sick, I had to call the deacon and have the deacon come up to the hospital and pray. But it wasn't until later on in life I came to New York and I sitting underneath another pastor here in New York City, and he wasn't talking to me, but he was talking to the congregation. He was like, "You have the own power within you to talk to God yourself.
Yes,
You have the own power in
Absolutely.
you to like lay hands and to pray over others." And as a grown man, was the first time I felt empowered enough in my spiritual walk that I could pray over loved ones and the sick. But that's how conditioned I was in terms of the dogma aspect of it. It was almost like this layer removed that I wasn't worthy enough to lay hands on someone, or I wasn't worthy enough to pray, or my prayer wouldn't be weighted because of that. And so when I do talk to you, that's why this movie really stood out to me, is because I've had that examination of religion over time, but in my examination, my faith has gotten stronger with my relationship with God.
Yes. I mean, she needs to answer this question.
Why do I
Like,
need to answer
stop
it?
playing. She needs to answer this question. Because when we were on set, I mean, she has an extraordinary practice in terms of how she gets ready for a scene. So, Andrew, when we're shooting any scene, right before the scene, can I say it?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay. Right before the scene, she has her headphones in, she's off to the side, and she's doing her devotional. That's what she does before she enters in. So, like, you open the door, she walks in, and she's there. She's in her moment. She's in the character. You never have to worry. You never have to worry about her being locked in that way. But it was, in some ways, beautiful for me to know that we have somebody on set praying for us the whole time. And when we would go to do another thing, she would say, "Okay, can we pray first? Can we do our prayer first?" And that, that's what we all grew up with.
Yeah.
That's what we come from. So I want to try to be clear about this again. This is not a disrespectful deconstruction of Christianity. That is not what we're doing in this film in any way, shape, or form. She wouldn't stand for it.
I don't. Yeah, well, no. To chime in on that though too, I think anyone who maybe feels that way is we're all
Mm-hmm.
growing in our faith. If you have faith and if you choose to have faith and if you, but I think if I agree. I think a relationship with God, if you choose to have one, can really only come through actually questioning and actually having your own relationship. I obviously I have aspects in my own family. Like my family was separated and kind of pulled apart from an experience in a church, and the questions, you know what I mean? And the how can a person, say this and do this? And the interesting thing is, though, I will tell you, just as you grow up and as you get older, you begin to realize how someone can preach one thing and do another, you know what I mean? And how we're still dealing with human beings. We're still dealing with people. And I think we forget that. Yeah. But then I came to my own relationship with God. I do love scripture. I do love the Bible, but I love my spiritual relationship with God, which, I think we're not taught things in church, sadly, because I think some of the institution of it, or the religion, or like you said, the dogma of it, has more to do with the power dynamic and the hierarchy in a church, right? As opposed to your relationship with God. I have developed a relationship and am reminded of scriptures where it says God draws people by his loving kindness. And if we don't see loving kindness, I don't know why we think we're reflecting the character of God. And so But
Preach.
I think that the questioning is a huge thing. One of my favorite, religious writers is C.S. Lewis, who also I think introduced Tolkien, right, and brought him to his faith. And he's one of my favorite writers because he describes his faith walk as kicking and screaming. He came to what he says, he came to Christ kicking and screaming because he just thought it was ridiculous. He thought it was just, absurd. And after all of his questioning and all of his research, years and years and years, for him it became the only thing that actually made sense and brought him peace. So I think you have to question. And anyone who tells you that you shouldn't question has made a God out of control and power, as opposed to, actually loving God and actually being surrendered. So that's why I loved this movie, and that's why I loved what he was doing. And we had hours-long conversation about this.
I think that's a beautiful point for me, just to take a pause and kind of reset for a quick second. And I think that is, Titus, you queued me up for this. I think that's what makes this film so beautiful, and for me, what makes this film an art piece. Because if you notice, audience, we're talking about this art piece, and as they always say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Art is what you make of it. Art is your own interpretation of it. And it was done so well. This was a strong point that really pulled out of me, was this religious context. And we've been talking for about 45 minutes, and the audience, you would probably think this is a religious movie, and it's not. I promise you it's not. But there's so many beautiful takeaways of this, and I cannot wait for you to see it. And what would be your experience, and what would you draw from it? I mean, it is that beautifully done. And the religious thing is very subtle. But if this is something you have been experiencing, it's your lived experience, it comes out of you, right? And so that is why I look at this as an art piece, more so than a film. And I've never had to moderate and unpack an art piece that is so visual for 2 hours. Unpack art, but not from this perspective. This film really is that brilliant. Andre, you helped bring out a lot of that brilliance into it. And there's a scene where, Andre, your character was saying you can't paint your way, out of your troubles and dynamics, right? And there's other ways to handle emotional and trauma, not just from religion, but talk to us about that moment in which your character was trying to deal and heal through art, and the relevance of that and the importance of that.
I'm one of these kind of old school people who believe, and I don't mean this to sound hyperbolic in any way. I truly believe that art and artists have the power to transform society. You know what I mean? I think that art should be at the forefront of like social transformation. I think that, I really relate to this character in the sense that his art practice is one of the ways in which he is able to try and metabolize some of the trauma, some of the difficulty that he's experienced in his life. To me, the interesting part is how much of that is conscious to him at the beginning. And I think that my opinion is that at the beginning, I don't think he's hyper conscious that that's what he's doing. And it's only through, the women in his life who can see what it is that he's experiencing, right? Who know that what he's been through and can see the work, who can say, no, you have to deal with the thing that you have repressed and like pressed down deep inside. I feel that in my own work, and even in relation to this movie, it's like there's a way in which like art and life, they have a way of finding each other at the right moment. You know what I mean? Like this script came to me at a moment in which I was going through a very, very difficult time with my own father, right? And we were having some very hard conversations as well. And it's fascinating, man. I don't know if I've told you, but that scene in the basement with John and I, when I first got the script and I read that scene, I thought, man, this is incredible. Because it's great writing, but also because I was doing that same exact thing with my own dad.
No, you did not tell me that.
Yeah, who was, nearing the end of his life. And we were sitting together and I was filming him and asking him questions that I hadn't had a chance to ask him before. Wow. Yeah, and those, I haven't told many people, but those videos, those recordings I treasure them, So in a way, what I'm trying to get to is that I needed this movie as much as I think, the movie maybe needed me. And there's a little bit of magic in that, man.
Yeah. I think that kind of goes with Titus. You were just saying about the offering, the father is giving it to the father, right? It was almost like the son's giving it to the father, right? Yeah. It's almost like this film is part of the healing process for you, and kind of moderating that in your own personal life.
Absolutely.
Which I think kind of gets to the depth of why when you came to the scene, you brought so much to it. Talk to me about, there's a powerful scene I felt when you were awakened from a dream, and it was so physical, where you lost your breath, you were choking. If you can talk to us about that, how you approached that scene, because I felt that as just an audience member just watching that film, right? Like the raw emotions of that.
Yeah, we talked quite a bit about that scene and trying to figure out exactly what the nature of this like panic attack or anxiety attack was. I read a lot about the body keeps the score and these different kinds of people who write about the ways in which trauma gets lodged into our bodies. And we had a little bit of a difficulty figuring out exactly what it is. Is it that he can't catch his breath? Is it that he's, what is it exactly? And I got to give you credit for that, man, because I think you really helped me figure out what that wanted to feel like.
Yeah. That was, I remember when we shot it, I was not expecting to see what I saw.
Yeah.
Like we got one take, because we did some other things after, but we really got one take because this brother literally put a hole in the wall. Yeah. Like that we were talking about how, maybe we'll do this with some effects or something. But he was so in it that when we said action, I was worried about him. And then he jumps up and like slams the wall in a wave, and then he comes out like a professional.
He punched it.
I mean,
he punched a hole through the wall.
I'm actually stuck on that. I thought that was a visual effect.
No. This brother put a hole through the wall, and I had to pay for that.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
As I look at your hand, Andre,
I feel you back, man. I got you.
wait, I'm stuck.
No, for real. I mean, that's the thing.
Oh my God.
I think for most people who don't deal with actors, they think that you go into the scene and you're pretending something. And that's not what's happening, not with great actors. That's not what's happening. They are going to a very deep place in themselves, and they are having their experience in that moment. So, yeah, there were so many times on the set, ingenue.
Oh, man.
Oh, there were so many times on the set where you are with one of your actors and they go so far in that you're like, I'm nervous myself. I'm recognizing that you are giving everything for this character to be realized for real. We don't see what actors do as a gift, as a sacrifice to us. The things that they have to take themselves through in order for us to get some sense of cathartic release as we watch what we see on the screen. It is a powerful, powerful
I want to emphasize that. One, thank you for talking that and saying that and being honest about that. Ironically, I wrote that down. I was taking notes as I was watching, and I actually wrote that down. But in my mind just now, I was like, I'm not going to talk about the physical aspect of it. I was like, that seems like a throwaway, right? I was like, the note I wrote as I was writing, I was like, I said something seems physical about this film, and then I was like, even the paintings, the cutting out, and I put the punching of the wall.
Wow.
But I was just thinking it was just acting, so I didn't want to bring it into the conversation. But
it's embodied. It's embodied.
That's
it's
insane.
not. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all should speak to this.
I mean, I'll say this. Like, I think, it's also about the writing, right?
Yeah.
Because the scene, and it's my opinion, the scene isn't even about the waking up, breathing. It's not about punching the wall. It's about the fact that his little boy sees him lose control.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
That's the point. And so like for me, unless you go all the way with the like punching the wall or whatever that is, then you don't earn the next moment of the little boy. So it's like you're doing it not to like show off or be, I'm so deep into this I can, but it's like I want to earn the next moment,
Right.
which is to see Jermaine's fear at seeing his father in that way, which then allows Terrell to see his father reflected in the eyes of his boy, which leads him to, oh Lord, I ain't gonna talk. Let me stop.
I've got teary eyed myself.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Because the note I wrote to that is when I said, when Andre Day grabs her son out of the bed after Andre hit the wall. There was so much generational trauma in that scene, in that moment. and the grabbing of the physical, but it's the way you grabbed
Yeah, absolutely.
the sun. To me, that shook me.
Yeah.
And it's the way you were so physical and aggressive with the wall, and the way you came out of it and realized what you had done. And you were just coming out of being choked, like your chakra was just closed when you woke up. I couldn't think of a better way just to end the conversation on that note. And just say thank you all for such a visceral experience that you guys have created for the audience, and for creating such a spiritual film that will hope and awaken so many different thoughts and conversations. And thank you for being so vulnerable and so raw in every scene. And thank you for being so vulnerable and raw here in this conversation today, because you didn't have to be. And I think there's going to be some beginning of healing. And now I have learned there is a difference between reconciling and forgiving as I'm on my own walk of learning how to forgive. So thank you to this beautiful cast. It has been my absolute honor. And
Oh, thank you. Man.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
Yo, appreciate you.
Thank
really.
you so much.
Seriously.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
yeah, that's all. That's all, folks. So until next time.